Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl, and here we are for another one of our Warhammer The Old World Warhammer Community post articles. Monday, yesterday, and we got another one released for the Old World Almanac where we're looking at the rules, and today is a big one. That's why I didn't rush it out yesterday. I was short on time and I didn't want to rush this one. This is one of the most important pieces, I think, for many people about how this game is going to feel and play, and how magic brings a sparkle to the battlefield. Yes, we're talking about magic. We know there's no magic phase, but hopefully now we're going to find out how we cast magic and how it fits into the whole Warhammer The Old World. So let's take a look at the article. Right, so what would Warhammer be without magic, without the ever-present risk of having your proud regiment of Silverhelms toasted by a well-directed fireball, or your Black Orcs grappled by the dwellers below? All reference to a rather nasty spell in the 8th. Right, so it's a 4-phase structure. The Old World is perhaps the biggest break, and there's now no set magic phase yet. We knew that. But that doesn't mean arcane arts take a back seat. If anything, magic is even more prevalent as it's cast during every phase of the game. I don't mind magic being prevalent as long as it is not so powerful that it's removing entire units of Chosen or whatever off the board. Okay. Wizardry 101. Warhammer The Old World set at a time before the colleges of magic. Yep, good, we knew that. So Imperial Wizards were still much around and tapping into the 8 winds, but the study of magic had yet to be so formalized in human lands. Okay, so kind of what we're saying here is a bit more than just your hedge wizard, and that would suggest they're way more accepted in the bulk of society at this point than I think what a lot of people thought about. So, okay, that's interesting from a sort of a lore perspective. Right, that's not to say there aren't laws. There are 8 in the core rulebook alone. That suggests there are laws of magic outside of that, probably specific to a faction, but let's take a look at what there is. Okay, so we've got battle magic, dark magic, demonology, elementalism, high magic, illusion, necromancy, and war magic. Okay. That's interesting, because it kind of says 8 in the core rulebook alone, which suggests there's more. But when you look at this, like necromancy could be Tomb Kings, war magic is clearly orcs, demonology / dark magic, demons, warriors of chaos, battle magic, maybe illusion sits in with empire. So, high magic, elves, maybe elementalism, elves as well. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Okay, most mages will have access to 2 or more of these, selecting one law at the start of each battle. Okay. Right. So, each law has 7 spells, with one being a signature spell. That's the same as what was in the 8th, for example. That's always available to its adherents. Every magic user has a level running from 1 to 4. The higher the level, the more puissant the wizard, and the more spells they know at the start of the game. Okay, yeah, pretty standard. So, spell categories, they've talked about this before, which is enchantments, which are basically augments to a unit, or buffs, for want of a better term. Hex are debuffs to a unit. Conveyance are ones that move or transport units. Yet magic missiles pretty much does what it says in the tin. Magic vortex, the same, tends to stay on the board though and tends to move around the board. And assailment, these spells are deadly attacks that strike the foe without warning. Okay, right. 6 types of spell. Enchantment and Hex in the strategy phase, yet we knew. Conveyance in the movement phase. Magic Missile and Vortex in the shooting. And Assailment in the combat phase. These are cast in the appropriate phase, so units can end up enchanted or hexed from the outset of your turn. Magically moved when it's time to charge, and blasted with arcane power when the rest of the shooting happens. Okay. Each conjuration has a casting value appropriate to how complex it is. Spells are cast on 2d6, adding the skill level of the caster. Okay, that makes some of the spells that we saw before more interesting. When you saw like casting values of 7 or 8, seemed pretty rough. But if you think about if that's a level 4 wizard casting that, he only needs to roll 4 on 2d6, which would be incredibly easy. So That makes sense. It's a quicker system than previously used, made into magic cards or pools of dice, leaving the tactical decisions of what to cast and when. So there's no cards and there's no pools of dice. It literally is, want to cast a spell, roll 2d6, add the skill level, do you make it? Now, you can miscast, because we have a miscast table here. So if you roll a natural double 1 when making the casting roll, regardless of the result, it has been miscast unless stated otherwise, it is not cast. Roll immediately on the miscast table below. So what have we got? So on the miscast table, you roll 2d6 again. 2 to 4, 5-inch blast template over the wizard. Every model, friend or foe, risk being hit with a single strength 10 hit of AP -4. Ouch. Calamitous detonation. Okay, so wizard explodes again, but it's a 3-inch blast template, and it's only strength 6, AP -2 this time. A 7, so you're starting to get into what you would class as a average roll. Spell backfires, knocking them to the ground. Wizard suffers a single strength 4 hit of AP -1. Okay, so no damage to friendlies in this one. Barely control power. Wizard manages to control the magic, but at the expense of great power. Spell is cast at its casting value for the purpose of dispels. However, cannot attempt to cast any more spells for the remainder of the turn. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Then 10 to 12, if you're lucky. With a deafening boon, the summon magic is unleashed and a natural calm descends. Spell is cast with perfect invocation. Okay, so we'll find out about that later, I guess. And however, you cannot attempt to cast any more spells to turn. Okay, so you can still cast the spell, but you can't do any more for the remainder of the turn if you roll above average. Okay, right. So magic's still a duel between opposing wizards. That's good, because that's something I really wanted. I didn't want this to be a one-sided affair. I wanted, the ability for an enemy wizard to stop it. So you can miscast, yes, and perfect invocation's a double 6. Right, okay. Every spellcaster can attempt to dispel their opponent's conjurations, provided they're within 18 inches as first or second level casters, or 24 inches at level 3 or 4. So this will be an interesting one. Do they mean, and I think they do, 18 inches within a range of the enemy caster or the target of the cast? I think they mean within range of the caster. That means your casters are going to be much closer to the front line, potentially, because they need to be in range to do that. Okay, roll 2d6 and add your level to the roll. If you beat the casting roll, the target spell is cancelled. Okay, fairly straightforward dispel attempt. Double 6 counts as unbinding, dispelling no matter the casting roll. But should you roll a double 1, you've been outclassed in the art. And you must roll the miscast table. Okay, so that's interesting. So dispelling, you can miscast. You have to beat the casting roll to dispel it, right? So it's not equal to or above. It's only if you get above. But it looks here that if you roll a double 6 to dispel against perfect invocation, because I can't see anything else that says it can't be dispelled, it says no matter the casting roll, it's cancelled. Okay, interesting. Yeah, both casting and dispel rolls can be modified by the wealth of magic items, of course, and by a number of special rules. Okay. If a player finds themselves unable to attempt a wizardly dispel, they may make one fated dispel per turn. Okay, so if you've got no wizards left on the table, for example, you can make one fated dispel per turn, which is an unmodified 2d6 attempt. Okay. To offset this, certain units, notably dwarfs, have an innate resistance to magic, making it harder for enemy wizards to cast spells on them successfully. Yet even dwarfs have some recourse to the arcane, runesmiths perfectly capable of making dispel. Okay, so dwarfs aren't going to get screwed over by magic-heavy armies. Okay, next up. Oh, damsels causing distress. That's Bretonia. Let's have a look. So let's take a closer look at one of the first spell slingers to be released next year. Bretonian Handmaiden of the Lady, from the lowliest first level damsel to the mightiest prophetess. So we've confirmed there's both in the rulebook. There's a hero and a lord. These formidable priestesses, the Lady of the Lake, may pick from 3 spell laws. Okay, so they get elementalism, illusion, or battle magic. Okay, and here we have, that's the new miniature, and then we have a profile here. So let's have a look. I just happen to have the Bretonnian army book here from before, as in the last one that was ever released. So when we take a look at our lords and heroes, shall we? So a prophetess of the lady. So here she's got 1 more weapon skill than previously, and she's got 1 more attack than previously, but everything else remains the same. The damsel, pretty much the same. 2 wounds, 1 attack, leadership 7. So the prophetess has 1 better weapon skill than and 1 better attack than in previously, and the damsel is identical. They also confirm base size there, so anyone that is really interested in what's going on with bases right now, got the discussion. Half the discussion I seem to see seems to be around bases. Which okay, if you're playing a tournament play, you need to have regulation bases. I get it, but in reality, most people aren't doing that. So bases, play with the hell you like, as long as it's not gaming for advantage. But there you go. If you are worried about it, 25 by 25 is the base size. Right, comes with a hand weapon. That's standard. Prophetess is base level 3. Can be made a level 4 for 30 points. Damsel's level 1, can be made level 2. That's absolutely the same. Magic items up to a total of 100. Okay, and Damsel up to 50. That's pretty consistent with the 8th edition and even the Bretonnian army book as well. So that's pretty much a staple in terms of the number of magic items they can take. They already said what laws. Now, what have we got special rules wise? We've got for the prophetess. So let's go here now. If I remember, the Bretonnians didn't have many special rules at all. They did have Blessing of the Lady, so it'd be interesting to see what it is this time. But Blessing of the Lady basically means affected models get a 6+ ward save, and you get a 5+ ward save against attacks with strength 5 or higher. That's what it was in the previous book. So this was based upon if you pray before the game, which meant you had to sacrifice the first turn. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle that and what it does. But that is essentially what Blessing of the Lady used to do. Aura of the Lady, which we have here, is damsels get magic resistance 1, prophetesses get magic resistance 2. Now we can already see magic resistance 2 on the special rule there. We don't actually know how magic resistance works, which way round it's going to work. It does have a -2 there, so we'll see how that is taken into account. But so Aura of the Lady used to boost magic resistance. There's magic resistance on there. Magical attacks as normal. Shield of the Lady's new, unless that was in. I don't actually, was that in the Damsel Vows? Could be in the Vows. Not the Vows, the Troths. Maybe not. Can't see anything relating to it. So these quite well could be new rules, which is not a bad thing. So I can't find anything about Shield of the Lady or Law of the Lady. Is Law of the Lady a completely new magic law? But then how does that make sense given that they've already told you the 3 magic laws she have? Maybe that just means that you get extra rolls for elementalism or something, or certain types of spell. Difficult to say, but certainly interesting there. So Aura of the Lady, Blessing of the Lady, magic resistance, magical attacks. We can understand what they do or what they were based on before. They may well have changed. Disclaimer. I'm only reading from a book that was very, very old, but was the last army book of the Bretonnians. But Lore of the Lady, Shield of the Lady is a bit new. Right, so what does it say? As you can see, she comes with plenty of options. Take her as a lowly first level conjurer or mighty fourth level archmage. She can be mounted on a warhorse, a Bretonnian warhorse, a royal Pegasus, or a unicorn. Okay. Bretonnian warhorse usually got things like they could have barding for no movement penalty versus a normal warhorse. So that might be why they're differentiated, for example. And then you've got a Royal Pegasus, okay, and a Unicorn. So Unicorn is a monstrous cavalry, has a 40 by 60 base size. So for you guys out there that, again, thinking about your bases, and you're thinking about monstrous cavalry, what else? Demi-Griffs, if they make it in, for example. That's a 40 by 60 base size for monstrous cavalry. So equipment, hooves and horns, so they get that as a hand weapon. So 10-inch movement. Okay, so that's quite quick. Cavalry in the 8th was an average an 8-inch move, so that's definitely up. Weapon skill 4, strength 4, wounds +1. So that tells me you probably add 1 to the wound of the prophetess profile up here. So prophetess would be 4 wounds, for example. Initiative 5 gets 2 attacks. And those attacks, right, Armor Bane 2, that's the Unicorn only. So I'm guessing that is additional 2 to Armor Piercing. Armored Hide, looks like probably +1 to the save. Counter Charge, that's good to see. So this is where we're starting to think about charge reactions. That's definitely new in there. I don't think we actually had confirmation of counter charge, but it does look like a lot of Bretonnian cavalry could and should have counter charge as a reaction. That's great. Magical attacks, yes. Stomp attacks, yes. Swift stride, okay. So we do have a unicorn in here as well. If we can find one, let's have a look. Unicorn, Royal Pegasus. The Royal Pegasus could just fly, was its main special rule. Can't see any unicorns in here. Where is the unicorn? Looking for the unicorn. Devoted to the goddess. No, can't actually see. I know, because the only person that had a unicorn was the legendary lord, which was the Fey Enchantress. So the Fey Enchantress, a unicorn, movement of 10 is the same, weapon skill is down, but bearing in mind this is a named unicorn, and the unicorn wasn't actually in the normal profile, so the only person that could take a unicorn was the Fey Enchantress. So weapon skill down, movement the same, no toughness value for the unicorn, so it looks like you're always going to be rolling against the rider's toughness, which is interesting. Obviously the wounds we've seen is different. The initiative is the same, the attacks are the same, and there's no leadership characteristic because it's using the rider. So we can see a little bit more on the cavalry, how that's going to work. So it looks like cavalry, you're going to use their movement. Obviously, they have weapon skill because they have attacks, the same with strength, but you're going to be rolling against the rider's toughness. The rider's wound characteristic is just an added wound, and obviously the rider's leadership. Okay, but it does have initiative as well. Okay, but it is higher than the prophetess. Okay. Any other special rules? No, nothing in here that you could relate to what's on there. So a lot of that's going to be new. So Beguiling Aura, don't know what that is. But magical attacks, stomp attacks, counter charge, that all kind of makes sense. Okay, so we can kind of see there has been a number of things done to these Bretonnian data sheets, if you like, or for want of a better term, or army list entries, and we saw the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth was actually pretty similar. What we're seeing is the stat lines are pretty similar, with the odd change tends to be around weapon skill, it seems. Seems to be the main change in a lot of cases, so that's interesting. And we've now got confirmation of base sizes, so I say that's going to be a big one for everybody out there as well. Right, she's at her best when she's joined by a unit of That's pretty much standard, which then also says to me, well, I'm probably not going to put her on a mount. I'll probably put her on foot in most cases, but maybe you'd want a damsel, for example, with a unit of Knights of the Realm, maybe, on a barded, and a Bretonnian warhorse. So that aura, right, so aura of the lady, here we go. The aura of the lady confers magical attacks and magic resistance 2. Right. Okay, so you get magical attacks and magic resistance 2 to the entire unit. That's very nice. Shield of the lady. This is one that we didn't know. Ability allows her to seek sanctuary in the back rank, where she can cast her spells. Ooh, that's an interesting one. So that special rule means she doesn't have to be in the front rank, but she can still cast as normal. I wonder how that works, though, with taking casualties and having to remove from the rear rank. I wonder how that works. Do you just pull from around her and she moves forward? That's a question in my mind right now. Is that great? So she's at the back. But if there's a step up in combat or even in shooting, where do you pull the casualties from, and how does that affect her? Don't know. Kind of thinking that you just pull them around and she moves around as needed. Okay, as a battle magic user, her signature spell is Hammer Hand, an assailment cast in combat to add considerable threat to the charge of the noble knights who flank her. Okay, Elementalists can storm call enemy units, slowing them and dulling their wits. Illusionists may cast a glittering robe. Okay, so we've got one of each of her laws in terms of a spell. And it's suggesting the damsel should be in a Knight of the Realm unit. Now, of course, we know there's Knights of the Realm on foot as well, so she could go Knight of the Realm on foot or Knight of the Realm on a horse. Right, okay. Hammer Hand, what is it? Signature spell. These are all signature spells. Good, so we now know the signature spell of Battle Magic, Illusion, and Elementalism. So that means every mage will know this spell. So in Battle Magic, 7+ casting value. So it's in hand-to-hand combat. A single enemy unit the caster is engaged in combat with suffers 2d3 strength 4 hits with AP of -2. Okay, doesn't have to be in base combat, just means her unit has to be engaged in combat with that enemy unit. Okay, 2d3 strength 4 hits, AP2, not bad, pretty nice. And for if this was a level 3 caster, you're rolling, you need 4 on 2d6. If this is a level 1 caster, you need 6 on 2d6. So not a crazy challenge, to cast it. Okay, but fairly straightforward for that type of spell. Right, this is the illusion one. So the signature spell of illusion. So this is an enchantment cast in the strategy phase, 8+, a little bit more than the other one. Range is on yourself. So until your next start of turn subphase, enemy units suffer a -1 modifier to any rolls to hit made against the caster and any unit they have joined. Ooh, now that is very nice for Knights of the Realm. One of the issues cavalry have obviously had is that when they charge, obviously they charge the enemy unit, they get the +2 strength to the lance. That's great. But in the 8th edition, they had real trouble breaking big enemy units. And then just didn't have the durability to then be attacked back due to lack of models because of the points cost, and the fact that if you're attacking, really tough enemy infantry, it's going to be hard. And tough enemy infantry should be tough, right? But this is just going to make your knights that bit more durable with the -1 to hit. So that's really nice for a unit of knights. So I can see maybe why they want to put her in a unit of knights. Just so that they can deal with that attack back. If this spell is cast, the effects of any other enchantment cast on expire. Okay, so you cannot augment a unit more than once by the looks of it. Because it's any other enchantment. So that's nice. So there's going to be no stacking of magic buffs. You're not going to have 2 or 3 casters augment the same unit and make it ridiculous like that a lot, I have to say, because I hate when you stack buffs to make something broken. So that's very cool. Like that a lot. Casting value 8, though, starts to get more difficult for the lower level casters. Okay, so the final one then, Elementalism. Storm Call. Right, this is a hex. Also in the strategy phase, casting value 7. Okay, a little bit easier. It's 12-inch range, so not very far. Until your next start of turn subphase, the target enemy unit suffers a -1 modifier to its movement and initiative. Okay. If this spell is cast, the effects of any... So you can't stack hexes on a unit either. -1 to movement initiative. The -1 to the initiative is nice because there is obviously initiative modifier in terms of in terms of combat and who attacks first. So yeah, you might by reducing that initiative, you might obviously get a chance to attack first if it's pretty close. -1 to movement. 1's not a lot to movement. So I guess it depends what it is. I guess if it's -1 movement on a unit of skeletons, then that makes a big deal compared to if it's -1 movement on a unit of cavalry or dire wolves or whatever it happens to be. And it's only to its movement. It doesn't say anything about charging or anything like that. So or even marching or anything else. So it's not like -1 like we've seen in Warhammer 40k recently. We've seen like -2 to charge, -2 to move, -2 to march, and so on, or running. Whereas this is just -1 to movement. Yeah, it doesn't seem like something that would be my go-to unless I really knew the initiative would make a difference. That's my take on it. I like the -1 to hit. I think that's great. And this is pretty solid to give you that additional combat prowess when needed. So if you're really trying to break an enemy unit, that would be quite a good one to help improve your combat result. Okay. There we go. That's the 3 signature spells. That was great to see. So in summary, the magic system may be simplified, and it definitely is without the cards and the pools of dice. Retains its tactical depth. I think the tactical depth is really going to come down to what spells you've got. I like that you can't stack spells, so you're going to have to really think about which debuff you're going to use on a particular unit, which augment you're going to use on a particular unit, so what hex, enchantment, and so on. So I think that's quite interesting. I think because there's no winds of magic, and the fact that you can just cast the spells all the time could lead to people stacking a lot of casters. And making it very magic heavy in the game. I think it's a danger with it, because obviously when you've got winds of magic, if you take 10 casters, then when you run out of winds of magic dice, you're out. So it doesn't make sense. But on this one, there doesn't seem to be any downside right now that I can see, other than the fact you can't double buff units and so on. But it doesn't stop me taking a whole bunch of magic missiles. And I haven't seen anything that says you can only cast that spell from that lore once a turn. So if I took 2 mages that use battle magic and they both want to cast fireball, I can't see anything right now that would stop that. Smoother experience, yeah, quite. I think it will be smoother in that regard. I don't disagree with that. Ranges have been cut short for both spells and dispels, which I like. I like that a lot. I think that you're not going to have a caster now sat on the back of the table, casting huge spells, are virtually untouchable. You need to be forward because you want to be dispelling as much as you want to be casting, and it looks like a range for a lot of these spells. I mean, that -1 to movement, that's within 12 inches, right? So you're pretty close to the enemy to be able to cast that. It looks like the range on a lot of spells is short. The dispelling is short. So wizards are going to have to be out in close to the front lines where they're going to be more vulnerable. I like that too. So next week we'll be investigating the Grail Knights. So confirmation, ladies and gentlemen, because we hadn't had any confirmation of the Grail Knights when we saw all the miniatures for the Bretonnians on the big Bretonnian reveal, and I do have a video on that. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But there was no confirmation of Grail Knights. They were one of the missing ones. Where they say investigating the Grail Knights, do I think we've got new miniatures? No, I think these are probably going to be the old ones, but they were a rare unit. They were a key unit. I had at least one unit of Grail Knights in every single one of my army lists because I just love the theming of them. In fact, I even cosplay a Grail Knight. So that's going to be really interesting. Love to see that one. And they're going to talk about how they interact with universal special rules. So hopefully we're going to learn more about that. Maybe we'll learn more about exactly how magic resistance is going to be applied and something like that. Great. Okay, a good article. I have to say this has probably been my favourite article so far. Why is that, you might say? Well, not only is this a key part of the game for a lot of people, really important in how it's going to play. I felt they've laid it out pretty well. They've made it quite clear in terms of the laws of magic, how it fits within at least the Empire's law. They've broken it down very clearly. They've shown the different types of spells. We've seen the miscast table. I feel there's been a lot of information on this. The confirmation of winds of magic, in that there are no cards or pools of dice. They've given a lot of good examples. They've covered miscast. They've covered perfect invigoration. I really like the fact they covered the dwarfs. They actually mentioned about the fact that if you don't have a whole bunch of wizards, how does that work for you? And they've even covered the dwarfs are going to have ability to dispel with runesmiths. Maybe not a surprise, but nice they've covered it and gone to that level of detail. Really cool to see now a proper army list entry for a caster. We've got the whole set of stats, the base size actually listed on it as well. So big props to GW for that. It's starting to answer some questions. Why have they hidden it before? I'm not going to get into that, but it's on there, so you can take what you want from that. And they've really shown like the different options. So lots of detail. They didn't have to do it, and I really like the fact they have done. They're showing the mount as well. That was really good, so we can start to see how mounts work. Showing the 3 signature spells from 3 of the 8 laws as well, which is the spell that every caster that has that law is going to be able to use. How it works is great, and also covering some of the special rules. So I actually think this has been a great article. Tons of detail, huge amounts of clarification. Nothing in here that gives me major cause for concern. I think the only thing that's in my mind with this article is, and let me know your thoughts on this in the comments down below, is there any reason not to stack tons of casters? That's not to say, I want a melee combat lord or a melee combat lord so that I can go and buff units and chomp through enemy units. Yes, but could I not do the same or more damage with some of those damaging spells? I think what's interesting for me is, can I cast the same spell multiple times from different wizards? Because, why could I not cast 5 fireballs in one turn? That's not answered. So is there, and do you see any reason or anything I might have missed that says stacking casters, magic users, is a bad thing, and why? At the moment, it looks like there's no downside to having lots and lots of magic users. There we go. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoyed this article on the Old World Almanac, looking at the magic rules in the Old World, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't know, give it a thumbs down. But please let me know why in the comments down below so we can improve our content for the future. And with that in mind, please hit that subscribe button. It's free for you to do. It's a huge deal for me. So thank you for that in advance. And it really does help me keep going and keep making the content. You've been watching The Ghost Owl. Let's tune back in next week and have a look at some Grail Knights. Man, I can't wait.